Okay, now we're recording. Okay, yeah, now we're recording. Sorry. Thanks, Josh. So let me try and start again just for the sake of the recording. Well, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to Lisan Lab, a conversation about language and meaning. Let me see if I can just adjust this OBS screen a little bit. Sorry, somebody's waiting to get in here. Someone wants to join the call. Okay, how do I let this person in now? What did I do? Okay. All right. So recording started. And back to the main screen here. Okay, so like we said, yeah, the first session went a little bit long. 2 names, lots of different grammatical ideas we can talk about, lots of different subjects that we went into. But I think with الملك here, this word is, this name of Allah is maybe a little bit simpler, so we might not spend as much time. And, I think that's a kind of a cool part of this Lisan Lab podcast show, study group, whatever we want to call it, is that the conversation can kind of go anywhere. And okay, so let's start. So one of the main things that we kind of try and do in this in these sessions is capture that moment of what I like to call cognitive grounding, when you take an abstract concept and you link it to something that's concrete in the world. So in the first session, we talked about the very commonly understood idea of the womb and Ar-Rahman, the mercy of Allah. So today, inshallah, we talk about Al-Malik. I guess before we do that, does anybody have any thoughts that they want to share about Al-Malik? Anything that comes to your mind? If you have no idea anything about the name of Allah,
when I think about Malik, I think about Kemen.
Say that again, Josh.
When I think about Malik, I think about Kemen.
Can you expand? I'm not sure.
The anagram of the root Malik, Kemen, to mean like completion or perfection.
Oh, Kamal. Oh, okay. So starting right away with the maqlubat, or the
Yeah, we don't have to take it there right away, but that's just, when you ask the question, I just am organically responding to what came to mind, like that notion of ownership or possession, and especially in relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the wholeness or the completion of that possession.
Zanira, go ahead. Please, if you feel if there's any silence, just go ahead and jump in, because it's a little bit crazy for me to try and manage all the different things I'm doing while recording and moderating. So just, inshallah, like a casual conversation. We don't have too much time because of but if we need more time, we can just start up another room. So please feel free to share anything.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to say I'm so excited, first of all, to join this. Thank you so much, Josh, for making this. I'm obsessed with the names of Allah, and I'm so glad to have a place where I can learn about this. Anagrams are completely brand new for me, so but yeah, I'm excited to learn about that. But yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is, for me recently, this name has been coming up a lot, and one of the things that I was thinking about is how it relates to the hand. Like you wrote here, the king and owner of dominion, Malik al-Mulk. But then there's possessor, which what does it mean to possess? And the word that comes up is milk al-yamin, like what is held in your right hand. And it's just about, in one way, it's like, this kind of very Jalali name, right? It seems very Jalali, like God is kind of overpowering us, like it's the owner of the dominion, like a having of dominion over us. But at the same time, it's like in the dua of Yom al-Arafah, it says, لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. And it's like, and in other places it says بيده الملك. So that's mulk, I think. And so there's also this really Jamali aspect of being held in Allah's hand. And so that's what I've just been kind of thinking about it, like this kind of balance even. And I guess there's also suggest people like say that Malik al-Mulk Dhul Jalali wal Ikram could also be one of the contenders for the Ism al-Azam. So yeah, that's all.
Sorry, what was the last thing you said? That could be one of the contenders for
The Ism al-Azam.
Ism al-Azam. Oh, mashallah, yeah. Wow, so many cool directions to kind of go with here. I kind of want to just prod Josh a little bit. Where, like, what made you think of the anagram there specifically? And I guess while you do that, I can kind of show a feature of this MindRoots application that I really like here, that allows you to search for anagrams really, really easily. So if we put in the 3 letters for the root الملك here, and then you hit the combinate button, it'll show you everything, at least within Lane's lexicon, which has a valid meaning. But Josh, did you want to share anything? Anything else about is it something that was going on in like the Fusus class or something that you thought of, or is it just where your mind went without any like previously being
No,
primed?
it's just immediately where my mind went, because especially when you're approaching the Arabic language as a second language learner, and you understand the logic that is embedded within the root system. For me, it's so like you're kind of what you alluded to in the beginning, it's association, right? So if I know that, let's see, I know the meaning of Malik, but I don't know the meaning of Kamil, but I know that they have the same 3 roots, just rearranged. Maybe there's some sort of association, in their essential meaning. Or if you have, different verbal forms of a root, and you don't necessarily know what the word means, but you know what the root means, or some permutation of the assembly of the roots, then you can maybe get a taste of what's being talked about. So that's just, I think it's just my natural approach to language, and so that's immediately what came to mind. Yeah.
So you do that normally whenever you come across a word, like a new word, maybe in Arabic or something like that, or a root. You just kind of
basically,
jump. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Mashallah, that's really cool. So all right. So yeah, you can see here in the on the screen, I think you have four dots, right? So that tells us that there's 4 different permutations or combinations. I always forget which is the correct technical word. If we jumble around these letters, right? So the max is 6, obviously mathematically, but we have 4 here. And I don't do this often. I don't know if it's because I'm a native speaker or because I was exposed to this much later in my life after I had already learned Arabic, but yeah, really interesting. So Malik is right here. It's this root right here, and Kamal, that's the other root that Josh mentioned right here. That's Kaf, Mim, and Lam. And really interestingly, the other one that I immediately recognize is Kaf, Lam, and Mim, which is the root word for kalima, which means to speak, or a word. I'm not sure what Lam, Kaf, Mim means, but if you're interested, you can kind of try this feature out and take a closer look. So it looks like maybe it's not a very common word, which happens very often. There are words like this that don't have too much meaning, but very, very cool. So really quickly, I think it might be useful to kind of just spend a minute or two just to kind of talk about um, the significance of anagrams and why we even think about them at all. Um, Much like we can say that, like, the root for الملك right here, if we click on it, we can see all these words that come from that root. You can kind of call this like a semantic field, or a field of knowledge, or we can kind of say that the root has a very, very, like, general abstract idea within the Arab mind, at least, and then all of these individual words are manifestations of that larger concept within the root, within mim, lam, and kaf. Now, when we start talking about anagrams, we're starting to say that those three sounds together have a kind of place in the mind, regardless of their order. So, regardless of what order you put them in, there's something about all of those sounds that are related in some way. Just like all of the words that are under one root are related in some way, and we'll talk about that. I think for the rest of this session. But even roots that share the same three letters are all connected, uh, in some sense anyway. At least that's the theory. That's the assumption. Some people don't like this at all. Some people go crazy once you start, like, flipping letters around and doing that sort of thing. Some people find it fascinating. I think it's just another layer in the beautiful kind of experience of language, right? One of the main kind of principles for these sessions, and for a lot of the research that I've been doing, is that language is a mirror of the self. The structure of language mirrors the structure of the self. So if you understand language, at a deeper level, then you can understand the self at a deeper level as well. Okay, so let's get a little bit less abstract and kind of come down to earth a little bit and look at the root itself. So I'll just go back to the basic visualization here. And we see this name is often translated as the king. Here we have owner of dominion, and the root word here, or the base word rather, the stem. I think there's actually some debate here, or some disagreement as to actually what the name is. Is it Malik with a long vowel, or is it Malik? So I think in most cases people, and correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone has a better idea, in the Quran there's different readings, but when it comes to the 99 names, I'm pretty sure it's the non-vowel, the short vowel. So yeah, this is again here usually translated as the commander or the great master, owner, and then we can kind of expand the root here and see a couple of other instances of the root, or a couple other words that come from this root. And you can have this in Arabic or English by changing the setting here if you have a preference, but we'll just keep it in English. So going back to, I forget who was first. Was it Zanira, I think, about the idea of, like, I think the hand of Allah. And like I said earlier, one of the main goals of this session is to kind of capture that moment when we discover that abstract idea and the concrete idea. So in the case of this root, mim, lam, and kaf, malik, the abstract concept, I think, is pretty well known, right? It's the idea of owning something, or possessing something, or having command over something. But the physical aspect, I think, maybe is a little bit less known, and that's simply as Zanir said, which is just, it's the idea of, like, physically actually grasping something, right? Like, even in colloquial Arabic, we'll use this word, or this root, or the verb that comes from this root, to talk about physically grasping something in your hand. So much more straightforward kind of like linguistic metaphor, you can call it. If you compare it to like Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, we talked about the womb and being connected to mercy, maybe much more deep there, or maybe there's a lot more to talk about there. But when it comes to this root, you have this idea of like physically grasping something, being linked to dominion or ownership. Um, and I think there's some more we can say here for sure about the grammar and the sounds, but I'm curious if anybody has any thoughts that they want to share. If they heard that before, if they haven't heard that before, you know, linking the idea of ownership. Personally, for me, when I think about it, I kind of think that like I tend to think of the ayah in the Quran where Allah says that He's closer to us than even our own jugular veins, right? And also the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he says, um, "القلوب بين أصابع الرحمن يقلبهم كيف يشاء," right? That the hearts are between the fingers of Ar-Rahman, and He flips them however He wills, right? So that those ideas kind of come to me when I think of Al-Malik, right, or Al-Malik, as being somebody, as Allah being an entity that literally kind of has us within His grasp. And there are references to the hand of Allah in the Quran, as I think was mentioned a few minutes ago, as well. But I'm gonna stop talking for a second and see if anybody has any thoughts that they want to share here. It was Zanira, right? That was mentioning about the hand of Allah.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah, yeah, and that phrase is directly within the Quran. بيدك الخير, right? With the
بيده الملك.
Sorry.
تبارك الذي بيده الملك, right?
Right, exactly.
بيده الملك.
I think there are other references too that refer directly to the hand of Allah.
Sorry, I just wanted to say how that also is like a specific thing, at least as far as I know, in Arabic. Because in other I feel like in other languages that would be redundant, like saying بيده الملك. Like it was in English, like in the person that holds, in whose hand is the hand. Sorry, in whose hand is the dominion. I don't know. Do you get it? I don't know how to say it, but yeah, like if mulk is something that is held in the hand, and then you say بيده الملك, in other languages, I feel like that would be redundant. But I think there's like, it could be like an ancestor thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Arabic has that a lot, where there's like a repetition of concepts for emphasis. So that's yeah, that's one of the features of Arabic, you can say. Go ahead, Mara. Please, anybody, if there's any silence, just feel free to jump in. No need to wait to be called on. Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. I was waiting. I didn't want to interrupt you. I think it would be, maybe we can draw some parallels between Malik and his hands, and maybe the way kings are being portrayed in paintings, like especially in Renaissance and maybe in the Baroque. I think it would be interesting because, come to think about it, we now have portrayals of kings showing their power and commanding to their people with their hands. I don't know if this is something that, I don't know, we might want to take into consideration, but I just wanted to say it. And it also made me think that maybe we can go back to Ayatul Kursi, because I think we also had this discussion back when we were doing the sessions about the Quran translations. And it was an interesting discussion back then about the whole idea of kursi. And while you were talking about hands, it made me think of how, yeah, we have he has our hearts in his hands, but also I imagine that his hands are sitting, like he places his hands on the throne, which is also the world. And I don't know, yeah, this is all I had in mind.
No, no, that's perfectly okay. Like I said, I thought that this session would be shorter, simply because it's just a much more intuitive concept, right? It's almost one that you don't really have to think twice about. It makes perfect sense, you know. I mean, this is the mind of the Arab. One thing we might want to start exploring, or we might be able to do, is kind of compare other languages, how other languages organize concepts like this. Um, Not every single word that we're going to come across, or that you come across in the Arabic language, does have like a very, very clear, concrete idea that's being connected to an abstract idea. But usually there is something. And in this case, I think it's very intuitive. The idea of like ownership, or dominion, or having power over something, is linked directly to um, physically holding something. Is there a hand, I think?
Yeah, Assalamualaikum. Could I go?
Yeah, please feel free. If you don't hear anybody talking, then feel free to interject, inshallah.
Yeah, so I was just thinking about when we were talking about the hand, and what the person, I forgot who it was just now was speaking, but they were talking about placing their hands on the throne, and this, um, like, kind of there being an active role, obviously, of like the one who owns and possesses everything, then, he has the most active role of kind of governing and shaping everything. Um, and it reminded me of the hadith about how it's when one sees an injustice, let him change it with his hand, and if he can't do that, then let him change it with his tongue, and then if he can't do that, then let him hate it in his heart, and that's the weakest of faith. And I don't know what really the connection is, because obviously, you don't see yourself as an independent actor, and you don't see yourself as the cause of anything. It's just that you're just human beings. But it just was interesting, like that kind of pinged in my head just now. And also, like, to take it back to something that Zanita mentioned of how it seems like a very Jalali name, but for me, I think this is the kind of thing where, like, it's when these concepts save your life, like, you don't see, like, you really see beyond that. Like, for me, I really experience opposites a lot, where I always go to the Jalali names when I need comfort, and I find the most comfort in them, and not because it's like I'm giving myself over to like this being who is capable of such awesome like wrath or whatever. No, it's because I don't even see that aspect. I only see the softness behind it, and that's kind of been my personal relationship with the Quran and with like Allah's word. I remember, like, just to take it on like a little bit of a personal tangent, like I remember when I returned to the faith, the first surah I really connected with was Surah Maida, and it's like this part where it's all about like, don't do this. This is made unlawful for you. This is made unlawful for you. This is made lawful for you. But then this is made unlawful for you, and it reads like a bunch of like rules and regulations, but I was just lying there in bed, like listening to it and reading the translation alongside it, and I was just sobbing because all I could see was the love behind that, like how much care there is behind that, of like, the world is a minefield, let me make it easy for you, you know. So yeah, I mean, these days, like, I haven't been able to join these sessions up till now, but like these days, the name of Malik is really getting me through. Like, it's one of the only things that's getting me through. And that's why, like, I joined this session. I really wanted to like listen in. But yeah, that's it.
Mashallah, thank you for that.
I think there are a couple other hands raised, but I'm just gonna, one thing I wanted to connect again. I mean, as you mentioned you can see in the tree that kalima or kalama is another anagram of this root, which is word, right? So just to connect to what Maham said, there's this very intimate connection between Malik, Kalim, Kamil, complete, and then also I just happened to look up the other like outlying root, Lamaka, and or whatever the vowels are, Lam, Mim, Kaf, and apparently that has the meaning having to do with to hit. So again, like involving the hand, and so it's just interesting, again, like one thing that I think could be interesting in the future, again, this might be a little too detailed, but I think it could be interesting to go to like some of these sources like is it Ibn Jinni and Abdulaziz al-Dabal, and some of these thinkers who talked about the root meaning of each individual phoneme, like the significance behind the sound ka and and la. And then, if we look at these roots and we determine, okay, and within the anagrams themselves too, there's some sort of like, they're dancing around something maybe which is invisible, but they all touch upon, they're all pulling upon. Well, then if we took that a step further and we looked at the individual sound symbolism of each of those letters, core sounds, according to these different thinkers of the past, like how could that even further open up the nuance of meaning to us of these words? So just a suggestion, maybe something that we don't need to incorporate into these sessions officially, but like it's another pathway where we could find deeper meaning.
No, for sure, inshallah. Meaning of letters is something we can definitely kind of try and explore. It's tricky because there's a lot of controversy around it, so I think we have to be, very kind of. I mean, it can go either way. You can kind of just talk about like what those sounds kind of mean to you, because at the end of the day, that's really all this is about is trying to capture those moments where like, oh, this is how language works. But yeah, there's lots of different ways that we can do it. In to be really brief, there's hands up, so I don't want to talk too much. But I think one way that I like to really kind of think about it is that sound, at its most simple and basic form, is really representative of our basic human senses. So there was actually a picture that I shared in the group chat a couple of weeks ago, Josh. You might find it interesting. This was like a paradigm that I came up with probably 10-15 years ago to kind of try and assign like meanings to the letters. And it's really just kind of taken from my own experience using the Arabic language as an Arabic speaker, my own research looking at like different words and different anagrams and stuff like that, and kind of just the sense that I got from like just thinking about individual sounds. And because that's very subjective, and because like it's almost arbitrary how subjective it is, what I tried to do there was kind of just pair certain sounds together, right? So like ba and na, for example, those are kind of close, or like ha and ha, so sounds that are kind of close together, kind of share some meaning. So I tried to kind of pair those. So it might be something interesting for you or anybody else that's really curious about like meanings of letters. And I think that's something that we could definitely continue in the chat itself, because those are the kind of things that are like, I don't know, you got to sit and think about it for a minute, and maybe talk to ChatGPT for a bit to help you organize your thoughts. But yeah, I mean, subjective experience, everyone's personal experience, everyone's personal sense for any kind of sound or word, that's really what we're trying to capture, not just with these live sessions, but with the group, and the larger research. So I'm going to stop talking for a minute, and please, whoever wants to go first, Zanira and Mara, I see two hands up.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add that, there's something else about like the hand that's like really Jamali specifically in relation to Sufism. And I think it's in Surah Al-Fatih where Allah says, Yadullahi fawqa aydihim. And that is just so, obviously that's like the official like bay'ah that a person might take as a symbol of initiation into Sufi order, tariqah. But it's also like beyond that, obviously we don't feel, I mean, most people might not feel the hand of Allah, but it's just like as a concept, it's really beautiful that like, God's hand is on top of your hand, like being held.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of
But
sense. Sorry.
sorry, there's one more thing that I was just wondering about. When I think about like the hand in terms of Malik, I would associate it perhaps with Rusul like Dawood alayhi salam and Sulaiman alayhi salam, Anbiya, sorry. But then I was thinking, it says here, وَاذْكُرْ عِبَادَنَا إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ أُولِي الْأَيْدِي وَالْأَبْصَارِ. And I always wonder, like, what does that mean? Like, I think, like, what does the ID represent there? Because these are not people that have, like, I think, kind of like dominion sort of power. And if the hand represents power, which it doesn't necessarily have to exclusively represent power, but like, what do you think? I just wanted to like pose a quick question for everybody about like what they might think the hand represents there and why these people. But I have hands, you have hands, most people have hands, but God is calling these people those who have hands.
Sorry, what was that
Vision.
reference? Any references that we kind of that come to mind or that we could
So
look at
it's
later?
Surah As-Sad, Ayah 45.
Oh, okay. If you can, if anyone like just as these sessions go on, if anyone has any references that that they want to bring up, if you can share it in the group, just so because I'm sure we can always revisit that and spend some time on it. But really quickly, what came to my mind when you started talking about that, and it came to my mind a little bit earlier too, when we were also talking about the hand. The hand is also it's naturally very symbolic of the idea of like power or an ownership and possession and stuff like that. But even scientifically, if you look into embodied cognition at all, which is a whole branch of cognitive science, and there's a lot of very interesting theories there about how like the language is an embodied thing, or cognition is an embodied thing, meaning that like very close to what we're talking about here about like physical ideas being linked to abstract ideas. Anyway, one of the ideas in embodied cognition is or some of the research in embodied cognition revolves around how does the mind conceive of the body. So how does if you imagine like the picture of your body that you have in your mind, what is it actually like? And I'm not sure exactly how this research was conducted, and I'll try to find a photo. But there is like a research study that kind of tried to depict this version of yourself that you have in your head. And I think they called that like a cognitive homunculus or something like that. Anyway, the image that you have of yourself in your head really is mostly, it's like 50% your hands, right? So it's kind of a funny picture. I'll see if I can find it and share it in the group later. But the way that the mind kind of conceives of the body is mostly the hands. Like you mostly think of or the mind mostly has its hands take up like the largest cognitive space within the mind. Sorry, that was a lot of words for something very simple, but yeah, I just wanted to share that. I think Mara, you wanted to add something.
Well, I think Zanira posed before we go to Malika. Zanira, what was the question you posed once again?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, about ulil aidi. Yeah, I don't know too much about that ayah in the Quran or that phrase. If anybody does, feel free. I know they're often referred to, or some prophets are referred to as ulil azm, right? So the prophets that like went through, the most difficult tests and trials, and they had the most like azm or determination. But I'm not sure about that phrase exactly. I think you put it in the chat, right? I'm not sure where the.
I'm sorry. It's just it says وَاذْكُرْ عِبَادَنَا إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ ulil aidi wal absar. And it's specifically like, how, I mean, if we say ulil absar, then we know, like, even if everybody that has eyes isn't ulil absar. So, like, what is basar? And it can be like insight. But then if everybody who has hands, which I think is most people, but they're not called ulil absar, why these three specific people called, sorry, ulil aidi, then why these three specific people called ulil aidi, like people who have hands? Like, what is it about their hands? Or, like, what does the hand represent? That's what I was wondering.
I'll look into that, inshallah. I'll make a note, and I'll look into that. I like doing Quran research whenever I have the opportunity, and that I've never thought about that before. I don't even think I remember.
What's the ayah again?
Surah Sad, ayah 45. I'll send it in the quotation, inshallah. Or maybe not.
Okay, so I think that's kind of a technical question, and it might take some research to get into it. So if anybody has anything else that they want to share, I think Mara, I think there's a couple of hands up, so feel free.
Malika.
Malika.
Assalamu alaikum.
So
First of all, Jazakallah khair for the invitation to engage the subjective sense. I've thought a lot about this root word because my name is Malika, and so I have always engaged with this question of what is my portion of this name, and so I was named after my grandmother, who I never knew because she was. My dad was very little. It was during the war in Eritrea, and she chose to take care of a child who had tuberculosis, and knowing that she would get it, and she did get it, and she passed away. So I always connected it to her, and I thought, okay, well, this is what leadership means. This is what this name means to me, is this aspect of there's this selfless aspect of leadership, of what it means to care for others. And then, my father always reminds me of these words that come from a hadith through Salman al-Farsi, who said this to Abu Darda, and then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam affirmed, لِنَفْسَكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقٍّ, and he would remind me, لِنَفْسِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقٍّ, yourself has a right over you, your body has a right over you, your soul has a right over you. And so then I was engaging with the way in which Al-Ghazali talks about the body as a kingdom and the soul as its king. And I read the English translation, so I don't know if what the Arabic version of that as king, if it's soul or spirit, but he talks about the soul as its king. And so then I think about, okay, well, if we're talking about what the hand possesses, if what I have is myself, that's my dominion, and the soul is king, then that leads me to Layla Bakhtiar talks about how God's deputy is the spirit, and Allah entrusted it with this honored state because it has the potential to rule injustice within the dominion of each individual human being. And so for me, as I think about, okay, what's my portion, and starting with the self, starting with, my soul, those are the questions in my mind. It's the heart, the soul, the spirit, what is king, or in my case, queen? What is, what does that mean for myself and how I engage with it myself? And so when I think about the way the Quran talks about dhulm, or wrongdoing, and talks about it against the self, we say رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا, we have wronged ourselves. And so this aspect of justice, this is kind of what I'm thinking about, this aspect of justice, this aspect of the dominion within each individual human being, and what takes that role of king or queen, and what does that mean in terms of how I engage with every other aspect of me and its role, and what leads. And so I just wanted to offer that as just something that I'm thinking about in this conversation, as it applies to just how I navigate the world and how I know myself, and know Allah through these names.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm curious, talking about these ideas as being somebody whose name, shares this root. If it maybe it strikes you a little bit more personally than it does any of us, because we don't have as much of a relationship with this root and these words as you do. So I always wonder about that kind of thing. About that's another aspect of like language and the meanings of sounds. Your name is something that's probably one of the most personal things to you. So I always wonder about how sounds and the sounds of our name especially uh, play any kind of part or shape our personality in some way.
Mm. Yeah, I can offer for me, like to engage with it, because like growing up, I was always really attracted to the Jamali names and those attributes, and the even when we talk about the people who really embodied that. Isa alayhi salam and Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. And I think what this has invited me to do is think about what it means to be insan kamil, and over time that's meant like deep love for, one of the sisters mentioned it earlier and it resonated for me as well, deep love for like and connection to the Jalali attributes as well, because they serve a function when we think about justice and the balance of justice and mercy, justice and pardoning, and like finding the taqwa in the balance. And so like if even and I'm connecting that now to the temperaments, right? I might have a disposition in a certain direction, and when I think about Susan Sallam as insan kamil, who had the perfect balance of all the attributes, that invites me to kind of lean into it. And so I know it's like we have our names for a reason, and so I appreciate that. Also the invitation to personal connection.
We lost some of the sound there a little bit at the end, but I think
A
we
little
got
bit,
most
yeah,
of
a little bit.
what you were saying. We have only 10 minutes, but I don't think there's any reason to cut the conversation short. If people want to talk, someone can just throw another link in the chat, and then we can just resume. Inshallah.
Yeah, Petro is saying something. Petro is saying it might be interesting to explore links and sound symbolism not only in Arabic but across languages. Yeah, that was suggested. Or it might have been before you came into the room, Petro.
For sure. Yeah, I mean these conversations can go anywhere from like we could have started and been like, Malik is related to the hand and literally possessing something, and that's it. And or we can go on talking for for hours, looking at every language and how they anyway, there's
to respond though, I think we have 14 minutes still in the chat. Word, yeah, Petro, that's serendipitous, because in response to Malika's share as well about like what is it that governs within me, or talking about the nafs, the ruh, all these things, and you mentioned Isa alayhi salam, like relating it back to this root, this triliteral root in its different formations, right? Again, Malik, Kalim, Kilma. In the Quran it says that Jesus was the Kilmatullah, right? He was the Kalimatullah, he was the word of God. And so, but it also says that we breathed our ruh into Maryam alayhi salam. So in a way it's like, well, what is it within you that is what governs within the soul, And this is a very classical notion of like the chariot of the soul in Plato's description of it. You have the rational part, which is the charioteer or the chariot itself, and then you have the two horses, which are the different aspects of the nafs, right? And so I think it's a good question you pose around like, well, what is it that is ruling within me, and how is it dictating my actions, right, or my way of being in the world? And so but linguistically, the connection between Malik and Kalam is very interesting, and also I think the other meaning of the root kalama means to be wounded, or like you're like wounding a page, right? Like when you put a pen or a quill to the page, there's like a wounding, right? And so it's almost like, and you brought in again, Insan al-Kamil, again, another connection to the same 3 root letters. What is it to be, I don't even think we can say like becoming Insan al-Kamil. It's more like, how can we be penetrated in a way by the light, by the Nur Muhammadi, right? By the Insan al-Kamil, right? We made you from one soul. So it's this, I don't know, I kind of orient towards it in that way, right? It's like almost, and I also kind of from both a Christian and Islamic sense, right? I call it like the Marian mode of being within my own spiritual vocabulary, of that absolute like passive receptivity to the word of God, right? To that vibration. And so again, it's not something that we can even try to do in a sense, right? It's like something that it's being done through us. And so I think that also for me, that puts a very soft, almost, I don't even want to use any more words than that, but like the way that we think, Malik oftentimes has this really heavy connotation. But I feel like when you kind of, it's like that classic Sufi, poetic language of lover and beloved, right? And so I kind of feel it in that light. In Greek as well. Interesting, Petro. There you go. Zanita, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say in terms of like embodying the names or like being a reflection, I feel like this is one of the names that you cannot embody. Like physically, if I'm gonna hold something in my hand, I actually don't hold it in my hand. Like God holds it in my hand, and God holds me in His hand. And so we don't actually possess dominion over anything like we possess, because it's just not possible for us to embody that name. So I was thinking that, even if like in terms of slavery, because this is actually a name of like, milk, ma malakat aymanukum, right? But is that a person a slave of you? Like if you have an enslaved person? No, they're not. Like, just metaphysically and just like in reality, you're a slave of God and they're a slave of God. But this is just like a temporary sort of like, possession. So like you can't actually embody that name. So like, what can we do? And like 2 things that came up were like, one was you can only embody the reflection, which is slavery. That if God is Malik and me embodying or reflecting that name, manifesting that name is by me being in submission to the dominion of God. By me putting my head down, not by me putting a crown on my head. And then the other thing could also be like in terms of proximity, there's another sort of, I would actually like to know, Omar, I'd love to hear from you, because I missed the part where you guys talked about like what the different vowel formations mean. But this name occurs in another formation, in an ayah, في مقعد صدق عند مليك مقتدر. So what's the difference between Malik, Malik, Malik? But yeah, the other way that we can sort of manifest the name is by aspiring to the position of proximity, India, of like God's, where He says, عند مليك مقتدر. You can be in a seat that is عند, like close to the Malik. Malik, that's all.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I was just thinking about that ayah at the end of Surah Al-Qamar. Why Allah chooses that, that specific form of the root. Not Malik, not inda Malikin muqtadir, but inda Malikin muqtadir. I think I'd really want to do a little bit more research before I speak much on an ayah of the Quran. But that at the very least we can say that form Malik, Fa'il, is the same as Rahim, same form there, and I guess I think we can just restart the conversation, but restart the group meeting. But I think really quickly, where I wanted to take the conversation was in the difference between Malik and Malik, because we kind of touched on this a little bit in the chat and in the previous session, and the main difference between these 2 words, and they they appear in different qira'at or different readings of the Quran in Surah Al-Fatiha. So some people recite Maliki Yawmiddin, and some people recite Maliki Yawmiddin. So there's a lot of different opinions on like what the difference is and which one has the higher degree. I think the opinion that I kind of lean towards is that Malik, with the short vowel, has the higher degree. And the explanation that I heard was that like Malik is somebody that possesses something and can manage it or rule over it, whereas Malik is simply somebody that possesses something. And there's different opinions. Some people flip that around. Some people add a little bit more to it. So it's kind of curious. But I think linguistically, one thing that we can kind of take away is that the difference between these two words is the long vowel, the a vowel, and that long alif, that long a vowel. It appears very often in the Arabic language as indicating some kind of duality, or indicating some kind of reciprocity, or indicating some kind of binary between two different things. So we talked about this a little bit when we said Rahman, all right, because that an sound is found in the dual, literally in the dual in Arabic. You know, when we take a noun and we talk about it in two, we say Ar-Rahman. We say like Kitaban or Rajulan or Qalaman, two pens, two men, whatever it is, we add that an aspect to it. So often in the Arabic language, whenever you have that alif, it also kind of has that sense of like duality or two things. Like if you say qatala, for example, that means to kill somebody. But if you say qatala, that means for you to fight somebody. So the idea of like a back and forth existing, is embedded in that sound, in that aspect of language when you have that long alif, that long a vowel. And I think that's kind of when I think about al-Malik or al-Malik in this kind of case here, and I'm just going to keep talking even though the meeting might cut off. If somebody wants to post another Google Meet in the chat, we can restart, but I'll keep talking for the sake of the conversation, for the recording rather. Yeah, so when we say al-Malik, right, the way I kind of think about it in that context is that we're not really focusing on the dualistic nature. We're not really focusing on like Allah's power and his dominion as separate things. When we say Malik or Malik, right, with the short vowel, it's really just about Allah in and of himself being the possessor and the owner of everything, and it doesn't really have that sense of like duality or reciprocity that you find in the long vowel version. And I think that's why there is a different reading when it comes to Surah Al-Fatiha, because you can have the meaning of Maliki Yawmiddin, the one who possesses Yawmiddin. Maybe Allah is just trying to emphasize just that aspect, that He is the only one that is the possessor of the Day of Judgment. But most scholars say that the meaning is so close that that's why both readings are allowed. So I think we're still here, right? Everyone's still here. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's pretty much everywhere I wanted to go on this route and this name. Lots of food for thought from everybody. Jazakumullah khair. And if there are more thoughts, please continue. If not, then Jazakumullah khair for joining, and we'll see you next time, inshallah.
Jazakumullah khair, Sidi.
Jazakumullah khair.